Adam Wuiske here from Wuiske Models, finally for part 11 of the Layout Insanity build. So where have I been, what have I been doing, and what's new? Heaps, actually. So, not to put too fine a point on it, I've been busier than a one-armed juggler with crabs. We've had so much going on. We've had hailstorms, we've had dust storms, tornadoes, you name it, we've had it going through here. All the things we're not supposed to have, but we've been having them. So for those of you that live in Queensland, you'd know that late October through early November this year has been quite interesting weather-wise. There's been a hell of a lot of the summer storms coming a bit early this year. And basically we've had hail, you name it, we've had it. So the hailstorm we had here was quite impressive and came out of nowhere. Normally the hail goes around us due to Rosalie Plains, the hill just to the south of me, and things like that. Well, it didn't. So that was quite impressive. So that was interesting, and then the next day we had a tornado come through. Very, think American sort of thing. In the 30 seconds it took me to close the windows on the western side of the house, it managed to absolutely cover the house with red dirt, which was interesting. So I've been sort of studiously working away and plodding away on that, and then I had it to a stage where it was looking okay, and then today we had a little bit more. But the tornado was interesting because it showed up on the weather map as being rain, but there was not a drop in it. It had its own thunder and lightning and all of that, but it was just red dirt. It was quite impressive. And so radio, I've been cleaning up with that, and with the assistance of my very capable assistant, the little robot vacuum Winston. Yes, I name my vacuum cleaners. It's a thing. So in case you can't tell, we've had some pretty interesting variations in weather. Now, that's something that for those that have been following with Adam's Corner and all the rest of that for the last 2 decades, you'll understand I've always had issues with track buckling and things like that, just due to the places where I live. So, as a for instance, in the last week or so, we've been hitting the low 40 degrees Celsius mark, which I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit or freedom language, but it's bloody hot. It will get a damn sight hotter, but we're already there a bit early. So then of a night time, it cools right down here, and we get quite a hefty breeze coming through that is pretty much ice cold. So those variations in temperature are where you get your problems. Now, I've had probably about 30 spots on the layout, which, bearing in mind, I've only laid 1,000 feet so far, so we've made not much of a dent, but I've had about 30 spots where there's been buckling in the track. Now, one thing that I can tell you about all of this is these problems are not actually hard to fix, okay? There's something that will crop up and they're not really hard to deal with. So when I'm laying my flex track, what I actually do is I cut an extra sleeper or tie, if you're American, or 2 back from either end when I'm laying the track. Now, the reason I do that is so that if I get to a point, or when I get to a point where I need to gap the track more than I have, I can just slide the fish plate or the rail joiner back and then hit it with a Dremel. So the plan is you just slide the fish plate back, take a standard Dremel cutting wheel and just cut about 1 millimetre, 1.5 millimetres of rail out, and then slide the fish plate back over. It's that simple. Now, that does leave you with a fair gap, but that's easy. You just grab a pair of needle nose pliers and you just slide the rail down until it's 1/4 to 1/2 mil of gap is left. Now you do the same thing and you can move that all the way down. So you end up with a small gap across 4, 5, 6 lengths of track. If you keep doing that the whole way around the layout, you'll actually knock out 90% of your problems. So the real reason for the buckling in the track is down to 2 things. Most importantly, it's the fluctuations in temperature. So people say, oh, it gets too hot or it gets too cold and this and that and the other. It's not actually true. It's the fluctuations. If you have relatively consistent temperatures, you won't get much movement in your track, okay? The same thing happens on the prototype as happens in the smaller version, okay? It goes from cold to hot, the rail expands. Now, on a 3-foot length of flex track, you can actually get expansion of about 2 millimetres in length, which, if you put that on a horizontal plane along multiple lengths, you start to see where the problems become quite dire. Now, the way around that, one of the easiest things is ballasting the track. which obviously I'm going to need several ton of ballast. The thing is that will help to hold it in place. It helps to reduce the movement, but you do need to have gaps in your rails, because that movement, or the bubble as I've referred to it previously, will actually move around to wherever the weakest point is, and you will end up with a kink, usually in a place like a tunnel or somewhere that's really hard to get to. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that will say, I've never had movement in my track, I allow for it, I do this and I do that. You know, usually it's followed with, I've built 147 metric layouts that are all 4 foot by 8 foot, or they're portable exhibition layouts, or they're modular. So to that, all I can say is, that's really cute, but this is not a small layout. Everything is different. Once you start getting to this size, the rules all change. Okay, we are dealing with genuine tonnage of bench work, genuine kilometres of actual track, and as someone once said to me, or Peter Sanderson said to me at one point, is he said, Adam, you're not building a layout, you're building an actual railway, in that everything is designed to function. So that is something to bear in mind when you're doing large layouts, is that the game changes. The problems you encounter are very different, and they can really drive you bonkers, which, to be honest, is not a very long drive for me, but you get that. The problems such as the buckling in the track and things like that, they're painfully annoying, but they're not really that hard to deal with, especially at this stage. So if you can find all of the problems now, outside of extreme events, you will pretty much make your life a lot easier once you progress further and have scenery, ballast and all the rest of that done. So with that out of the way, a few other things have been going on since the last video. I've also got some more lights up, so there's now 40 of these 4 foot LED light bars up. So 160 feet of lighting, which covers about 240 feet or something like that. It's a fair bit. So, but still, that's around about 25-30% of the lighting that we need. So it's a bit. Now, currently, the way it stands is pretty annoying in that these are all wired in sequence and they have plugs going to power points. There is, as I've mentioned before, 36 double power points around this room. So there's a few. I'm not running short of electricomy. Basically what happens is, at the moment, when you walk in this room, you walk down this aisle and you flick on a lot of power points. The plan eventually is to have them all hardwired in, so that when you come into the layout room, on the left-hand side, before you walk in, there's a series of light switches, and they will switch on these lights. So that's the plan. We shall see how we go. Now, I should point out, for those that don't know, I am not actually an expert with electronics and things like that. I tend to regard electricity as some form of cult. I'm not sure I believe in it personally, but, you know, we're going to claim I'm an electrical agnostic, if you like. All I do know is that if you do it wrong, it ends up becoming the electrical death cult. But outside of that, I know 4/5 of bugger all about electricity. So, radio, I try and leave it to the experts with those sorts of things. So far as wiring the layout, as I've mentioned many times in the past, I'm just plodding away bit by bit and learning as I go. I've done DCC on my last 2 layouts, technically 3, with sound and all the rest of that. The last one was multiple power districts and everything else, so I learned a bit of information there. I'm now going with block detection, so I'm learning every step of the way, which is quite painful and apparently quite comical to watch. So whilst we're talking about electricomy and death cults, I have actually done one thing that I'm really glad I've done in the last week, which has been waiting for about 1.5 years, and that is to wire in the last 2 blocks for the branch, which is the 2 roads that go into platform 3 and 4 at Turbot Street. So now the entire power district and the entire branch down to Hamilton is completely live and operable, and has been operated quite a lot. So it encompasses 4 stations and 2 yards, plus about a dozen industries. So it's a fair bit. It's what would be regarded as a large layout by itself, and it's probably about 10 to 15% of this layout. So we shall see how we go. Whilst I'm at it, over my left shoulder is what will be the 4X Brewery. Over my right shoulder is the start of Brisbane City. So high-rise buildings, things of that nature, in that very stereotypical 1970s and 80s disgusting style of just where architecture took a break and they went for this brutal, disgusting concrete sort of fetishism that is just vile. But I'm looking forward to it. So over my right shoulder right here there will be a road coming across, veering left and going into the backdrop, and that will be surrounded by high-rise buildings. So that's something I've just got to put in the base for the road, and then I'll start putting in the bases for the buildings because I want them at varying heights. So there will be quite a lot of undulation in the terrain. So we shall see how we go. The only reason I haven't done it yet, because it has been something I've been looking forward to doing, is just because I wanted to make sure that the track was all live and that any movement I was going to get was accounted for. And so to get all of that bedded in and settled before I started doing things that would have made it difficult to rectify. But now that that's done, I can actually progress and start doing it. So hopefully by the next video, I'll have at least a bit of it in so that you can see what the plan is. So normally when I film these videos, believe it or not, I don't really plan them. Stop laughing now. Effectively, to do this 15 to half an hour video, it sort of normally takes me an hour or so. I might sort of potter around and shuffle a few things and all the rest of that. And that's how, if you notice and go back through the other videos, from the start to the finish of the videos, my shirt usually gets progressively more dusty just with moving things around here. This time's a bit different. It's currently 1 o'clock in the morning, and after I filmed the last bit, I was kind of thinking, well, bugger it, I want to get that last bit done. So I've gotten in and I've started doing the base for a building. So there's the base for another structure on the layout now and another road. So I'll just show you what I've done. So here we are at Turbot Street Station. You can see platforms 3 and 4. That's the bit I've just wired in, and 5 and 6 is still as yet unwired. And then 5 and 6 disappear through into what will be a tunnel under Brisbane City and coming out at Caboolture, and 3 and 4 just comes around and heads off to Hamilton. Now, as you can see, this is what I've just done in the last hour. Fairly straightforward. That's the Walther's City Apartment Blocks kit, I believe. And it comes around, and then there's where the where the 4X Brewery will be, and then heading into Milton Station. So that's fine. But just wanted to show you, this is where I'm at. So the idea of what I'm doing, because this area is heavily undulating, so we've got a roadway here, which is fairly wide, because it will be a 4-lane road plus footpaths. And then, so that's going around a curve and up a gradient. Now, we've got semi-level ground behind that, so it starts out at a level lower than the street, and then becomes very quickly higher than the street. So, and then there'll be a retaining wall coming from the roadbed up towards there. So this area here, effectively, imagine on the side over here, you'll have sort of your footpath and then steps going up and steps coming down. So built into the concrete, and then gardens and things like that around the building. And then we'll have something similar over here on this area, which will cut across the track and then starting to come down a hill along here, and that'll form the backdrop to what is Turbot Street Goods Yard. So this is where I'm at. So with an hour's work, this is just made out of 6mm MDF that I just had laying around, and some offcuts of 19mm yellow tongue, again, that I just had lying around, and a couple of bits of studding material that are screwed to the framework. So it was a quick and easy project. It only took me about an hour, and, you know, why not? So that sort of gives things a bit better shape so you can see what's happening. So I hope that helps, and I hope you find that interesting. So now that that's done and sort of vaguely in there, the next step for here, well, actually is to do more of the same on this side and to get that in and to start getting anything else for sort of bases for buildings along here heading towards the brewery. Now, and then from there we start filling it in with plaster bandage or cardboard webbing, then plaster bandage, and then start doing the retaining walls and all the rest of that. So that's sort of the plan. But as you can see, it's quick, it's simple, there's not really much to it. So effectively, the thing I learned, especially when I was doing architectural model making, is that you make your bases for what you're working on, and then you just sort of fill in the gaps. It's not that complex. It is quite simple and straightforward, but it's very rewarding, and you can actually sort of see the shape of what I'm planning. So that's the idea. And so hopefully you found that helpful. hopefully we've touched on a few things that are actually of use to the average human, or not. And hopefully I'll have a bit more on this area at the very least done by the next video. And also hopefully, there's a lot of hopefullys here, it won't take so long for me to do the next video. But we shall see how we go. So if you've enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, sign blank checks and all the rest of that sort of stuff. And have a look at the others. We'll see you next time.